Social media platforms and internet search engines are the main source of news and information for the majority of Canadians. Canadians rely on online sources not just for information, but to share their unfiltered stories and their creative expressions. The internet is a powerful resource. It has made presidents, prime ministers, and even celebrities. The immense power of the internet can be used as a shield or as a sword. As a shield, it is an opportunity for the average person to participate in the media and to be able to showcase their talents without going through big broadcasting networks. As a sword, it can be used as a form of control and a limitation on free speech. Woe unto you if the internet falls under the control and the force of a government that will use it to divide, demonize, and control. We have seen that authoritarian governments have gone so far as to systemically censor and limit thought, free speech, and freedom of press by using the internet. While we want to trust our governments, unfortunately, we have seen that this Liberal government has not so subtly an agenda of controlling and overreaching. As lawmakers, we must resist and the desire to distrust and unduly control Canadians in a free and democratic society. We must also resist any government initiatives to try to mold Canadians' opinions and preferences by limiting their online options and opportunities. Neither the Liberals nor any government, regardless of your political stripe, can be trusted to be neutral referees of what is preferred speech and preferred content. The Prime Minister's response to one of the biggest protests of our time is evidence of this. We saw that our Prime Minister refused to listen to legitimate concerns of fellow Canadians, even when those who trucked from clear across the country came to just have a conversation, choosing instead to label people as racist, misogynist, anti-science people with unacceptable views. And this was done in order to silence and cancel their voices. A Prime Minister who can hardly tolerate differences of opinions within his own cabinet and party cannot be trusted to respect the different opinions and preferences of Canadians. Freedom and the opportunity to share information and content must be protected, and primarily it must be protected from governmental interference. Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, opens the doors to government control of Canadians through their internet activity and speech. We've heard these concerns about this government in the last iteration of this bill. Unfortunately, the same concerns remain with this bill. The Honourable Minister has stated that the intent is to level the playing field for Canadian creators and producers. It is argued that Bill C-11 will make it easier for Canadians to access Canadian content. While this objective is noble, unfortunately, this legislation continues to be fundamentally flawed, just as the previous bill. Primarily, it gives the Canadian Radio, Television and Communications Commission the power to control what Canadians can and cannot access and view. As a result, the government inevitably can begin to drift into the authoritarian territory, tempted to block, hide, and promote certain content. Under this new bill, as you scroll through the latest videos on YouTube or Google searches, the government's algorithms will decide what pops up in your search. This is an attempt to control and censor any content they find inconvenient or un-Canadian. In effect, this government would control what you see when you search for a video on YouTube or conduct a search on Google. By so doing, the government would be picking winners and losers by predetermining which content creators are worthy of viewing and hiding content the government thinks Canadians should not see. More nefariously, this legislation could be used to control and limit speech and opinions that differ from those in power. In believing the far-reaching impact of this bill is potentially more dangerous than we can ever imagine. You see, Madam Speaker, when it comes down to it, the problem with this legislation is that it leaves the impression that Canadians cannot be trusted with their online choices. And the Liberals don't think that Canadian creators can thrive without their meddling. The reality is that Canada has produced a tremendous amount of art and talent to share with the world, and they do extremely well when compared to their global counterparts and on platforms such as YouTube. Madam Speaker, this means that before the Liberals started meddling with regulating the internet, many Canadians had already had successful media careers online without government oversight. Also, very problematic with this bill is the lack of clarity around the definition of what constitutes Canadian content. In addition, because of the stringent Canadian content requirements, many new emerging artists will not be considered Canadian enough to be protected and promoted under Bill C-11. These requirements will also adversely impact on minority communities in Canada who rely on cultural content from their home country. Canadians may be blocked from accessing ethnic streaming service providers who will choose rather to opt out of Canadian market rather than pay the high costs and enter into the red tape. As parliamentarians, we need to know exactly how this bill will be applied before it is enacted, and the regulatory decisions should not be left up to the CRTC. Madam Speaker, I want to raise another point that is related to this topic, and one that many Canadians are greatly disturbed by. Last year, MPs of all parties were horrified to learn of the abuse being facilitated by MindGeek, which has a corporate presence right here in Canada. We were encouraged to see members of Parliament from all parties, including many of our colleagues across the aisle, question why a company should make billions off of broadcasting the abuse of others. But here we are now, talking about making the internet safer, more friendly for Canadians, better for children, and our focus is on whether someone is generating revenue from TikTok and how the CRTC can make them pay into the system. Is this bill all about money and controlling what Canadians think and manufacturing groupthink? Where is the decisive action to address the broadcasting of sexual violence? Where is the urgency to protect vulnerable girls, women, boys, men in society? If we're talking about making the internet safer for our kids, maybe worry a little less about what Netflix is airing and more about why a giant company has been profiting from broadcasting sex-trafficked girls. What is the priority of this bill? Shouldn't we be more worried about the access of our children to sexual violence instead of worrying about whether the content is made in Canada? In closing, Madam Speaker, it is in many ways, this bill is an attack on free speech. It is an attempt to control what Canadians say and watch online, and it shows that this government has its priorities all wrong. I would call upon my colleagues to rethink this bill and to work together to truly make Canada a safer and freer country. Thank you.